Welcome to the Carl Jackson Podcast. Tonight is a special episode. We're bringing together many cultures, many different beliefs, many different religions to talk about our world today and how we can come together as a family and learn to live civil, because that's what we need. So without any further introduction, let's get right into this conversation that happened on Zoom.
One of my favorite memories of ever singing that nigun is with a group of mostly British Christians at a Tibetan Buddhist retreat center on an island off of Scotland, introducing them to the Jewish concept of nigun and really realizing how trans-religious, trans-cultural, trans-national a wordless tune can be. We're not, arguing over dogma and meaning, but just allowing the music to connect us to the Holy Spirit. So I wanted to start today with nigun. And I'm going to turn now to Alex, who's going to share with us a reading to kind of launch us into this holy conversation we're about to have.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to read a poem by a poet named Ross Gay, who's a professor at Indiana University, that I found and really spoke to me. It's called A Small Needful Fact. A small needful fact is that Eric Garner worked for some time for the Parks and Rec Horticultural Department, which means perhaps that with his very large hands, perhaps, in all likelihood, he put gently into the earth some plants which, most likely, some of them, in all likelihood, continue to grow, continue to do what such plants do, like house and feed small and necessary creatures, like being pleasant to touch and smell, like converting sunlight into food, like making it easier for us to breathe.
Thank you, Alex. Wow. Kind of want to meditate on that poem for a bit, because there's a lot that needs to be explored there. But I also want to jump forward into this conversation. So we have 10 people here represented on 9 screens. James, you get a double dip over there. And I want to ask us to go around and do very brief introductions. I'm going to really try to keep us to 60 or 90 seconds, because introductions obviously can go way long and take up more of the time we want to give it. Your name, because not everyone knows everybody. Your connection to the house faith community or the house of worship that you're here representing or that you're connected to, and answer one or more of the following prompts. Do not feel the need to respond to all of them, but respond to some of them. And I'll put them, after I read them, I'll put them in the chat so you can be reminded. Something you're afraid of in this moment, this world, this era. Something you are hopeful about. Something you wish you knew about the other, however you define the other. Share a painful image from the past few weeks or month, or share an uplifting image from the past few weeks or month. So again, I'll put those all in the chat, but after you say your name and your connection to your faith community, you can respond to one or more of those prompts. And everyone's screen looks different to everyone else, so I can't just say, let's go clockwise. So I'll just call on people in the order that I see you going clockwise, kind of. Well, you can't really go clockwise in a square of 9, but you know what I mean. I'll start from my top left. So Rabbi Schatz.
Hello, I'm Rebecca Schatz. I'm one of the rabbis at Temple Beth Am. I work with Rabbi Kligfeld. So I didn't have as much time to think about these prompts, but I will answer the first one. That something that I'm afraid of, that I guess bleeds into something I'm hopeful for, is that I'm afraid that I, as a leader of my community, am not saying enough. And I am hopeful that in having these conversations that I will learn the things to say and the ways to enrich my community.
Thank you, Rabbi Schatz. James, you're next.
All right, I'm James Collins, and I am with my wife, Diana Songbird Collins. We call her Lady Diana. We are founders of Exousia Evangelical Outreach Ministry. The question that was posed, number one, is what are you afraid of? The first thing I have to say is chaos and confusion within the community. I realize people have the right to protest peacefully as well as voice their concerns, but my concern is that of safety, and then obviously during this pandemic, our health, the way it is affecting our community, as well as our houses of worship. If I had to think about something that's uplifting, this type of call we've established this morning, two different communities coming together to make a difference, I would say that's the image that I would like to hang on to at this time. How about yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Diana Holland, his wife, and also a co-founder of HedexTV and Evangelical Outreach Ministries. And I'm also a soloist and a worship leader. I've done that for many years now. The thing that I think I'm afraid of is exactly what Rabbi Schultz said, and I was praying about this for the last couple of weeks. Am I doing enough? Am I contributing in a way that is going to be helpful to our community and to our world? And that is something that I pray about and try to incorporate into the music that I bring and just the way I live and communicate with those that are around me in the community. I'm happy to be a part of this call.
Thank you both, and thanks for being a part of it. Alex, you just spoke before, but you're next in my rotation.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Alex DeGood, a longtime Beth Am member. I guess hearing those questions, I think what struck me is thinking that I'm hopeful, and I mean, I preface this by saying maybe it sounds a little obscene to say hopeful in this context, given what spurred where we are right now. But I guess I feel hopeful that for the first time in my life, I see a national consciousness and conversation taking place in all of its sort of multifaceted and often, you know, loud and justifiably angry and painful ways, that hasn't taken place in this way that I have seen, and seems to be more broad-based than anything I've ever seen. And that provides me with a measure of hope. And I want to be part of continuing that.
Thank you, Alex. Tyson, you're next on my screen.
So for an uplifting image, I talked about this on a Beth Am Zoom call a few weeks ago, but I was at that first Black Lives Matter march on that Saturday that started at Pan Pacific Park, and it was really inspiring to see so many different types of people all together, and so many young people, that people of all stripes and colors and descriptions, all kind of marching together at, you know, before the police tried to establish control. It was very peaceful and very inspiring. And just kind of touching on the other you know, sometimes you don't understand your own kids that well. I didn't know about the event until my daughter said she was going to it. And then she keeps on saying things and I'm like, I don't know about that. And then I would do research and she's right about stuff. So it's kind of interesting to have, you know, my daughter being, knowing what's going on sometimes about some things more than I do. So that's something to be hopeful about, that I think, you know, like Alex said, it's gotten very broad-based, but especially the young people seem very inspiring and motivated and also very organized. You know, like some of these events you see are being organized by teenagers. It's pretty amazing.
Thank you, Tyson. Carl, you're next on my screen.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I guess my name is Carl Jackson. I am the host of the Carl Jackson podcast and the CEO and owner of CJC Television Network. And I wanted to do this because James invited me to this spirited conversation because he knows that I have a heart to want to make all of us get along, basically. I think my fear is we're just going to continue repeating the same patterns and getting stuck in this rut of not understanding that we're all human. I think the human factor has been lost in some way in all of these conversations. We're so focused on the stuff that really does not matter. Color, what you believe, your preferences, all those things mean nothing when it comes to the broad spectrum of humanity. We're human, that's it. So my fear is that we haven't gotten that lesson yet. And I hope that conversations like this will challenge our thinking and make us realize how much we are just, we don't have to live this way, that hopefully my daughter who's 6 can look at what her father is doing and go, because my dad was able to have conversations with everybody because they're human, I'm going to live my life the same way. And if we can get 20 million other people to see it the way my daughter sees it, we might have a better world when we all leave this place. I think I went over my 90 seconds, sorry.
No, but it was worthy. Thank you, Carl. Amen. Amen. Stuart, you're next.
Rabbi, of course you have me following Carl Jackson with this.
I want your second day of the presidency to be challenging.
That's not fair. So I want to respond a little bit, kind of conflating a couple. You said something you're afraid of in this moment, something you're hopeful about. There is, as I see it, as I approach it, I think of those two in a combined way, because we're at this moment in time. We're at this it's like a precipice of time. And I worry a lot about, which way we're going to teeter. We can teeter on the side of disunity and real divisiveness in this country and in our communities in a really bad way. Or we can teeter on the other side of really finding, maybe because we're in sort of the trough of this moment, of finding a breakthrough. The conversation that Alex was talking about, and just sort of, finding a need for a national reconciliation of who we are and where we're going, and are we going to finally recognize the pure humanity in all of us? So I'm both fearful and I'm hopeful at the same time, because it's our choice how we're going to go, and I hope that we, in a tiny way, can all make a difference.
And your name and your connection to your faith community?
Sorry, my name is Stuart Tochner. I'm a longtime member of Temple Beth Am. I very, very, very much miss James over there. It's so great to see you. I'm so happy. Yeah, I'm the incoming president of our organization.
Thank you, Stuart. Ananias, please, you're next on my screen.
Okay, Rabbi, thank you and good day to everyone. As you stated, my name is Ananias Rose. I'll introduce myself by somewhat of James and Diana. I've probably known them right about 30 years. We attended the same church there in San Diego, some 30 years ago, I think, so at Calvary Baptist. Since then, our journeys have went in many different ways. James has evolved, Diana has evolved, and the Lord has blessed me somewhat too. Presently, I serve as the pastor, the faith group leader for the Naval's Military Chapel here in Naples, Italy, is where I'm speaking from. So I'm very fortunate and thankful that the Lord has blessed me in that way. But for as the items that you've spoken of, I just couldn't help but to put down a couple of notes from what others have said that fall right in the line of my belief and my desire for us participating in this. One, I do hope that in what's going on in the nation today, that, you know, we can say the protest, but we hope the message doesn't get lost about equality and so forth. And I think Alex kind of touched on it. It's great to see that everybody's coming together, uniting, multicultural, every different race is coming together to try to correct some of the injustices that have been going on for decades. I do believe from some of the things I've worked with, terminology I picked up is that this here, as James kind of alluded to, is like, I feel real hopeful when we work together to do good, because oftentimes individuals like to say, oh, I did this, I'm gonna do this, and I don't want to know what I'm doing. But when we come together like this, we bring so many different experiences and views that could benefit our overall objective, and that is to contribute to the world. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Ananias. And thanks for joining us when it's late in the evening for you in Italy.
That's all right.
I was about to call on Paula, but she just disappeared. She's been going in and out of the call for some reason, so I'll go, and then hopefully Paula will join us. So here she comes again, but let's see if she's here quick enough. Paula, if you're hearing this, you are next. If you want, I can go next, but if you're hearing us and you want to go next, please do so.
I am. I'm really sorry. I had to take my husband to the doctor, and I'm waiting in the car for him. So, but I didn't want to give this up. So I don't know what I'm hopeful of is the same thing that I'm fearful of. I almost don't trust myself to be hopeful in this moment, because I'm so fearful that it will be another moment and we'll fall on the wrong side of the precipice, in Stuart's language. The other thing, though, that makes me hopeful is, for many of us, these are not new experiences, right? We're not, I mean, I don't know what everyone's lived experiences are, but you know, I know that my life experience is not the same as James or Carl's or Anais or Diana's. I know that, but I think many other people know that now too. And that's what gives me hope, that there's a recognition of different lived experiences, but that shared humanity. So my fear is that we'll squander this opportunity with this newfound recognition. But I'm a born optimist. I wake up every day saying, hello day, today's a new day. And I believe in change. I would not live my life. I could not be the person I am in my life without truly believing in change and transformation. So I hope this is our moment, you know, to really take significant changes in light of the pandemic, I know earlier we've been saying we can't go back to the status quo. You know, it's not the status quo, and so in this area as well, we can't go back to the status quo. So, my name is Paula Perlman. I'm a member of Temple Beth Am. I also participate with Temple Beth Am through our community organizing. We're a member of One LA, and I hope to be able to integrate the One LA experience with this experience as well. I'm a mom of 2 adult children and a new grandchild on the way in November. So my life is overflowing with hope, and it's also tempered with our realities. Thank you.
Paula. I'll go. I'm Adam Kligfeld, one of the rabbis at Temple Beth Am, and honored with James to bring this group together and trying to both stay present in the moment for this group of 10 people, but also with like nervous and sacred excitement for what can be from here, what the next steps are in bringing this conversation, this experience to our shared communities. Responding to my own prompts, I think one of the things that I wish I knew about the other, and for the purpose of this conversation, the other is not that there's anything monolithic about any one community, but the Black African-American community as a white Jewish man from the East Coast living in Los Angeles now for 11 years. I wish I knew what was most needed and helpful and what was most not needed and unhelpful, because good people do a lot of guesswork. And guesswork can often be wrong. It can be well intended, but I know that I think I'm good, and I know that goodness leads to guessing, and the guessing can often be off base, even intended by the right thing. And I think one of the things that I'm afraid of is because we live in an era where there seems to be a lot of thought pressure to think and say and do the exact right thing, and the consequences for being off a little bit are so great for one's social standing, for one's professional standing, frankly. I'm afraid, and I'm being very vulnerable in this group, that my fear about saying and doing something that's a little bit wrong will stop me from saying and doing anything. And I'm afraid of being stymied by the circumstances when there's a lot of good and important things to say and do. So I'm afraid of that for my own life and leadership. That's one of the reasons why I want to have this conversation with all of you.
Rabbi, I'm sorry, please
go ahead.
Me when
please.
You finish. I do have a comment about something you just said.
Please, Ananias.
I paused. No, please finish.
Well, the next thing I was going to say was that the next part of this conversation is to give each person at least one opportunity to offer a 60 or 90-second response to something that someone else said. So you're a prophet because you knew I was going to say that because you're already doing it. So please, Ananias.
Well, actually, my comment was going to be on yours as well as Paula's. I think some of the things that's going to come out as we continue forward in this group discussion is those differences that Paula has acknowledged that, hey, look, I know I have an experience with James and Carl and Ananias and so forth. Those things are going to come out. But I think because of the spirit that's in each of us, we're united in a way looking to make a difference that's more Christ-like or in the right direction. So I commend you for your humbleness and the way you presented that, Paula. But what I would like to make sure you're aware of, Rabbi, is that I'm hoping, I'm not going to say an oath or vow amongst all of us, that we can come together in these discussions and realize that things are going to come out, and we got to recognize how this group has come together. It's because everybody here in some kind of way has the spirit in them to do the right thing. So we can trust that where you said that you might not understand how some might take it, but we do know that you're bringing it up with the spirit of love. And that's the difference in how we move together and discuss those things that have been uncomfortable for the world or others. And we can do it and move forward out. Hey, look, hey, shoot, Rabbi, she understood what I meant. You know, she takes no offense. And that's the same thing going back and forth, because that's the key right there. And I've always said for years that the key to success in anything is communication. So we have to get our understanding of our levels of how we're going to communicate and recognize that, hey, he's using us now to do this. And because he is present in our lives, we come to the table prepared to represent him in how we respond. And the big thing that we have to do in communication, if we don't understand a comment somebody has made, be like Paul has acknowledged, well, I might not explain, I don't understand that. Can you elaborate a little bit more? Ask, so that we won't walk away, ooh, he said that, he meant that. No. Get the understanding. And I'm sure when we do that, we'll come away, oh yeah, that sister, she's pretty good. That brother, he represents well. So I'm through now.
So now the floor or the Zoom is open. Unmute yourself at will and kind of have a cross conversation responding to anything that you heard in these introductions. We'll do that for about another 10 minutes or so, and then we'll move into the next part of the conversation. So have at it.
Well, I was gonna say something if I can.
You got it, Carl.
So one of the things that I wanted to piggyback off of what he just said is part of communication also, in addition to what he's saying, because I agree with everything he said, is listening. I think we miss the part about listening. We think communication means we should be speaking, always talking, always got something to say. I've done more as a parent by listening to my daughter than I have telling her what she should or shouldn't do. Because what happens is when you listen to the other party, you're establishing two things to me, in my opinion. You're establishing trust, because this person is giving you information or giving you a piece of who they are, and they're trusting you with this information, and they feel comfortable enough to do that. But then the second thing you're doing is you're opening the door for change. If there's something that you want to negotiate, there's something that you're feeling that you would like to speak about, now that person feels relieved and feel almost in a way obligated to listen to you, because if they're sane, because they want to have a relationship. That's why they're talking to you. They want that relationship. So I think that listening is probably the number one thing to communication that we all, me included, have a problem with. Sometimes we struggle with that. So listening is number one. And then the final thing I was going to say was, you know, you look at this coronavirus, right? And I think that's a great analogy of what's going on. We're forced now to quarantine, right? Because something has happened, it's gotten so bad that now we almost don't have a choice. We're forced to come together and follow in this, you know, systematic way of relieving ourselves from catching this virus. And that's, to me, is what's happening now. We've pushed it so far that now we have no choice. We have to deal with this. We have to address it. So we really can't necessarily say, I'm afraid to speak on this or say that, because we're forced. We have to figure it out. And the best way to figure it out is to listen. And that's all I had to say. More of this spirited conversation when we return.
Hop in, everybody.
Okay, my wife is ready to hop in, so I'm gonna yield to her right now.
So I was just going to say also in response to Rabbi Craigfield, I hear what you're saying, and I think that we have to understand, and I tell people this a lot, there's a difference in hearing and listening. We hear lots of things, but if we're not really listening, if we're only hearing to respond, then we have not really heard. You have a group of people here that have a heart, the Spirit of God in us to hear you, not just to listen to you and to understand so that we can come together. I had an experience, and I'll make it quick. I ran into a little 3-year-old boy, blonde hair, blue eyes, beautiful little kid, and he was staring at me for a long time. And the mother went to grab his hand and he said, "Is that a black person?" And she was just all up in arms, and she went to grab him, and I said, "It's okay. I'm not offended by that. If he's never seen anyone that looks like me, this is his opportunity to now get some kind of understanding of who we are as a people." So whatever you say, just know that, especially from me, there's no offense taken. My family runs the gamut from blonde hair, blue eyes, to darker than my husband. So I grew up with all kinds of people around me, and I'm comfortable in whatever setting I'm in. So feel free to share from your heart, and you'll hear from our heart.
All right.
Your comment, Dana, reminds me of a favorite Kligfeld family story. Before I moved to Los Angeles, we lived in a small town in upstate New York, and within that town was a village of about 20,000 Hasidic Jews who lived in their own little enclave. And occasionally they would come out to go to the bank or go to the park, whatever. And my 3-year-old at the time was amazed because she thought that Jews looked like us. And she was amazed when she learned that all the people who were walking around with black hats and black jackets, that they were Jews too. And she was excited. But the way she expressed her excitement was we would be in the bank, and a Hasidic Jew would walk into the bank, and she would point to them and say, "Jew, Jew." we had to teach her to just wink at us because she was so excited that she saw a Jew. But I imagine that was not a pleasant experience for them. But she was just learning that Jews can also look like that. So that's what your story reminded me of. Who else wants to join in? Stuart, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to say, Diana, that story resonates also. Talker family version of that is at Pressman Academy when my son was about 5 years old. Had to be pretty young, maybe even younger. And it was their introduction to Martin Luther King Day. So we learned all about Martin Luther King. He's a huge baseball fan, so he's very much putting it in the context of Jackie Robinson. And he comes home that day and he asks my wife, "Mommy, are we black?" And she said, "No, we're not." And he was crushed. He was crushed. And we just love that. Everything we're talking about in the context of fixing here, these problems are learned. People don't come out that way. It's you have to learn it.
Hey, all of these stories are very inspiring. Rabbi, it's not fair that you give a Baptist preacher 90 seconds to respond. Let me just put that out there first, number one. Number two, I have been blessed by God to have an experience multicultural across the globe. Going back with Sergeant Major, and it's actually 40 years, Sergeant Major Ananias Rose was a demented drill instructor in my series when I graduated basic training in San Diego back in 1979. So I just wanted to put that out there. Because we have all been brought together, and now we are experiencing 2 pandemics, I think it's crucial that we do 3 things. Communications, as you've heard earlier, we have to have open, honest, effective communication between each other, because oftentimes the noise just drowns out what the real message should be. Secondly, we need to cooperate with each other, come together and work together as a unit. As the old folks used to say, unity within the community. The vision I see for us is both communities coming together to start that process. And by doing that, the last C, coordinating events, community outreach, being able to learn one another, being able to spend time with one another, being able to worship with one another, being able to have fun with one another. My history with Betham goes back to 2005. Here we are in 2020 with the 2020 vision. This is a part of that vision. And what I would like to see going forward is that we maintain that vision together consistently, where we could really learn each other, love one another, and work together.
I'm going to use what James just said as a transition, even though I still want to hear other people's reactions to the first go around, but sensitive to the time, because this short gathering was meant both to create a sacred cohort of people who are going to work together and then actually start the work, right? And kind of, I suppose in a good community organizing approach, I have no idea what the work is going to be. We're going to figure it out together. But the reason why James and I brought this group together is because we think there's a there. There's a something. There's a something that Temple Betham, a predominantly white but not completely white Jewish synagogue on the west side, with some partnership with a Black community of faith, should be doing something in this moment that involves a whole lot of listening, and I love that theme has come up. And yes, worshiping. I mean, there are certain ways that people of different faiths cannot worship together, which makes sense because there's too many places where it butts up. But there's an enormous amount of worship that can be done together, and worshiping together is a powerful thing. For some reason at Betham, we've done more joint worship experiences with the Muslim community than the Christian community. There's no good reason for it. It's just what we've been focusing on, and it's very powerful. We've had Muslim groups in our synagogue doing their prayer service and our watching them, and then they're being there with our prayer service. There's something tremendously ennobling about that. And so I think some worship would be a wonderful thing. But I have no idea what the idea is. So what I wanted to put out for us to just talk, and I'm happy to take some notes on the side, is if this group of 10 were to put its minds and hearts together for a first something, and I know I'm being vague, but a first something where members of the Betham community and some of the communities represented in this call got together digitally for an event, a gathering, a sharing. What would it be? What should it be? What should it not be? What's a good place to start? What should we not jump into so quickly? What's something that will both feel good, but also not be so feel good that it avoids important issues, right? We're not doing this just to make ourselves feel better. We're doing this to make an impact on the local community. So that's the framing in the aftermath or not the aftermath. While we're still in this moment of good people in this country being properly enraged by the pimples on the American, to say the very, very least, on the American reflection in terms of how race is handled in this country. What is it that our communities can start doing? And we don't have to think of the 10th event, we just have to think of the first event. So that's the frame. I'm gonna stop talking and take notes and see what good people can come up with when they start brainstorming. So unmute at when and if you want. And if you hear me clicking, because I don't wanna forget, I don't wanna miss anything that you're saying.
I'm not going to directly answer the question. I just want to add something that I would have added before you added what you just said. So another rabbi who works at Betham and I have been trying to put together some kind of series between one of our fast days and another one of our fast days to kind of take us from destruction to rebuilding. And one of the pieces of information that we are receiving back, as Rabbi Klickfeld mentioned, we are predominantly a white Jewish community. We also have Jews of color in our community, Jews who became Jews as part of our community, or Jews who were born into Judaism as people of color. So we know that there is a subset of Jews of color in our community, and when we have asked them to be part of our series and able to speak to our community, their answer, and a very respectful answer, has at this point been, it's very hard to feel like the other, and by sharing my story, I don't want to be othered. And I humbly respect that and honor their desire to keep to just a private conversation with me as a rabbi. And I wonder if whatever is the first thing that we do can have this angle, this focus of making sure that we are not othering Jews of color or anybody from the Black community, and yet that we are hearing those stories, because I think that it's cyclical, that if white people continue to talk about how they're feeling in dealing with the racial issues in our community and in the world, that we're just going to continue to hear one another's voices and not do all that listening that we were just talking about. So that's just a framing. I don't have any answers, but I just wanted to add that that is something that we are struggling with in our community right now, if that can be a part of whatever is created.
Floor is open. Carl, please.
No. Whoever you said. Go ahead.
No, I was saying floor is open, so claim the floor.
No, I was just going to say I agree with everything she just said. And I think it's also our responsibility to not make it difficult to connect. A lot of times I don't know if it's because of insecurities or because of you're afraid. I don't know what the reasons are. I'm not a psychologist. But a lot of us who are African American, we have this tendency to assume. And I think we also have a part to play in that. And if someone invites you to dinner, you say, yes, I want to come, or no, but it's not anything deep. So I think it's also our responsibility as well, that when you guys reach out, we say, okay, and we connect and we come really ready to grow and to learn. So that's all I was going to say.
Thank you, Carl.
If I might jump in, while I was at Temple Bethlehem Freshman Academy, Principal Inez Tiger would always have an afternoon session where she would bring us together, sort of like a town hall roundtable meeting. And in that, she would touch some of those sensitive subjects that were considered taboo. What I would like to see for us initially is we would have a similar town hall roundtable meeting, one where we could sit down with each other, preferably after this pandemic has gotten to a point where we can do that. But two, that we could have face-to-face discussion and then bring out some of those things, and then also bring out some of the issues that are most misunderstood so that we can connect to each other in a positive way. So that's the first thing that jumps out at me regarding making that connection.
James and others, can you imagine a version of that clearly different than it would be in person, using a Zoom platform and breakout rooms that would get close enough to what you described that it's worth doing now? Because sadly, I don't know if we're talking August, November, or 2022 before we can get like 200 members of our community in the same room to do that. Like, I don't know. I'd love to hear others' thoughts on James's idea and other versions of it, right? No idea is a bad idea in brainstorming. Just throw things out.
I don't have anything exact as far as what should be done or how, but music is integral. I mean, it is a universal language, and I think it would be great if we could come up with something that would bring the community together with music, because people are always interested in that, and of course that's just something that I love to do anyway. What I was born to do, I think, but I think maybe if we could think of something like that, it would be great as well. Again, we have restrictions right now with the pandemic, but I've had an opportunity now to sing for a worship service from home on my computer using Zoom.
I agree. So it will be obviously less of a enveloping impact on Zoom than it would be in real person, but I think it'd be a powerful part of it. Paula, and then I saw Alex wanted to say something also.
Thank you. So I'm using my phone because it doesn't disconnect, but on the computer so I can see everybody at one time. So, but I think that there's both like short-term immediately what we could do, and then longer-term conversations that we can have. I'm really willing to engage in difficult conversations with the hope of greater understanding and clarity and closeness, actually, to a different community. I'm wondering how James's daughter, Diana, how she's doing, like that soon-to-be high school graduate was how many years ago, you know, that kind of thing. But so those connections, I think really in those relationships, I think really transform stereotypes and transform sort of oversimplified thinking about people and other people's communities and experiences. So short term, I think anything on Zoom, further conversations like this, even as James said, you know, maybe we submit questions and we, you know, grapple with whatever challenging questions we have. And then longer term, how do we come together? I know that when I have a 90-year-old uncle, and we were talking about the Black Lives Matter, and he was saying, well, aren't they anti-Semitic? And it's like, oh my gosh, okay, let's have a conversation. But and then he forwarded me something, and I thought, where's my uncle getting information from? You know, it's like really under a crevice and under a rock, and it was just, and so the idea that, and you know, clearly I don't share his, and he doesn't say that those are his views either, but we're willing to have hard conversations with each other about Black Lives Matter, about Israel, about family, we just are. And so if we could do something like that and then move to a bigger platform with the congregation, I think that would be really a good place to start.
Thank you, Paula. Alex, then Stuart, and then Tyson.
Yeah, I mean, I think in large measure it's been covered. I think the idea of having honest conversations where we know the good intentions of those who are entering into them. I think in the spirit of listening, from my perspective, and I think, you know, sort of more broadly, maybe the Beth Am community perspective of, you know, it was Paul, I think, who started this by talking about our own lived experiences. And I think part of that connection is hearing about people's lived experiences on both sides, but I think more so in this context from the Black community. And I guess what I also then that leads me to is sort of the idea of, as we build on this, you know, I think part of this is motivated by, it should not be the sole responsibility of a group of people who are bearing the brunt of inequality, both historical and very real today, to solve it on their own, right? And wanting to hear, what is it you want us to know? And what is it that we could assist in doing? And I know that's, you know, probably more of a down the line thing, and we're talking about how to build this and create a community of trust and openness and honesty, and I think that's fantastic, but I guess that's sort of my ultimate desire and question.
Stuart and Tyson.
So I'm thinking as a template, as I'm listening to all of this, the way I go about in my own life of having conversations with people who have diametrically opposed political views than I have, having not about two different communities, but within our own community, Temple Beth Am, or the larger Jewish community, people who have very, very, very different views than I do. And there's a general tendency these days to cut off those communications, you know, to talk only within your silo because it's easier. And I very, very strongly resisted that. I don't believe in it in a fundamental level. And the way I've gone about doing that, I think successfully, is that, you know, so much of the relationships is based on something other than the political conversation itself. You know, we recognize we are we're all parents. We all have issues with our kids. We all talk about, you know, we share so many of these experiences together. And when we bond over those, it creates a certain level of trust. As sort of as Carl was saying earlier, you know, seeing the human in each of us. And then you move on to, you know, the more difficult subjects, and you deal with it honestly and sometimes with difficulty. But I think that this notion of sharing something in order to create the bonds of trust, in order to hit the harder issue, is really a very important part of the dynamic. And not only just hearing each other talk about shared experiences, like you know, like kids, like, you know, the effect of the pandemic, like, you know, the shared experiences of people losing their jobs, you know, whatever it is like that. But also building something, you know, to the extent that this group together is actually trying to build something together, that itself is a certain bonding experience that can help us tackle whatever difficult issues we feel is important. So that's the way that's kind of the template in my mind that I'm using for this discussion.
Tyson, and then I'll try to synthesize what I've heard, and then we'll wrap it up. I do want to be sensitive to people's time, and we named this as an hour-long initial meeting. Tyson?
Yeah, so I didn't give my introduction at the beginning, so yeah, I just forgot. So I mean, I did it, but I forgot to say my introduction part. So
sorry.
I'm the chair of the Social Action Committee at Beth Am, and a lot of the programs we do are with immigration issues to refugees or asylum seekers and so on. So we've done a lot of different types of programs that are working with, you know, Muslims or Latino groups. We haven't done a lot with Black groups, except unless they're from Africa, right? Because it's mostly been kind of immigration type issues. So one of the things I wanted to, just as we're talking about this, to think about what our goals are, like, you know, and think of what our first program would be, is what the goal would be of it. Because I could think of a lot of different ways to go. You could, and this is some of the things we've worked on, you know, with the immigration stuff, is it sort of, it could be like our two groups working together towards some third thing, like, you know, working on, I don't know, voter registration or the pandemic or homelessness, or I don't know, something to show that we can work together to accomplish some third goal. Or it could be sort of like we're different, right? It's like, you know, mostly white, mostly Black, you know, Jewish, Christian, like two different groups that have differences and engaging and understanding each other. Or it could be something more like at the human level, like we're all, like we have commonalities, and so we're not going to focus on our differences, but like more focus on whatever, you know, like discussing how we're all dealing with, you know, the pandemic or dealing with chaos, you know, whatever it is. I don't know, and like Stuart said, there's the differences between our two groups in the Zoom call, and then within Beth Am, and it's probably, you know, the same for you guys, maybe not as extreme. We have Republicans and Democrats in our synagogue. We have people that say Black Lives Matter. Some people will say, yeah, Black Lives Matter, and other people will say, hey, all lives matter, right? You know, some people will probably do that in our group. So just to think about, you know, like kind of Stuart said, what's our long-term goal? And we might not be able to get there right away. We might need to sort of lay the groundwork first and then build the understand. If we said we're gonna have our first session be, you know, exploring Black Lives Matter, some people in our synagogue will automatically be like, whoa, 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 you know, like they won't be on board with that. Whereas if we have some other beginning theme, they might be like, okay, like that sounds cool, I want to engage with that. And then maybe bring them along to, you know, some of these more, you know, controversial. That's not really a suggestion of what to do for our first event, but just to think about sort of what are our long-term goals of this, and to think about, we're not going to be able to get there perhaps right away, but maybe we need to do something first to lay the groundwork, and then we can build towards whatever those long-term goals are.
Yeah.
And the music thing, I'm fully on board with the music thing. Every time we've done an event with music, that always helps, right? So I think whatever we do, that's got to be at least a interlude or a like beginning, ending, or, you know, I think music has to be in there somewhere.
Carl?
I was just going to piggyback off of Stuart, what he said, and Patrick, but definitely Stuart. We have to also try a way to get away from, I think, the whole concept of groups, because even though we have to start off that way because everybody's in their sector in a way, we have to figure out a way to become one in our humanity, which is separate from our views. So a lot of times we make decisions based upon our views versus basing it off of our humanity. So I think Stuart brought up a really good point, and I just wanted to kind of throw that little seed in there. That's all I wanted to do.
Thank you, Carl. Ananias, I think you're about to say something.
Yeah, Rabbi, I just wanted to add one thing that I thought it's going to be difficult, like Carl is saying, for us to do the group thing. But to go back to something that Stuart said, or it might have been Tyson, I think our initial goal of doing something together might be that we need to work on us and our relationship first, communicating on who all we are and what all our personalities bring to the table, so that we know whatever we do plan down the road, it will incorporate everybody's ideas and thoughts. Well, I mean, I said it might not be everybody's ideas or thoughts, but at least we heard them and selected the best one and trying to get the best product in our efforts to bring others together. That's one point. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not as eloquent, or I don't have that melodic voice like Diana, but I can get in the background and every now and then. So I think music will be a great part in there. But the last thing I would say is recently, I'm just resuming what I had once we were doing. It's a monthly prayer walk around the military base. I've got, about 8 different points. We walk about 3/4 of a mile, stop, and I got about different things to pray about. Certainly, that's on the list lately is injustices and racism. That's on it. So we stop, we do a 1 to 2 minute prayer on that. Move around by the hospital on the base. We pray for the staff. We pray for the patients. We pray for the hospital itself. And, we walk around. We pray for the base security. We pray for the leadership of the world. So I think a prayer walk within our individual thing might be something where you can get your community maybe to participate in that. But yet and still, we come together. We get to know each other. And then I think along the way, when you even had a prayer walk, somebody else might come up with something that you can bring to the table here. And we said, that's what we need to focus on. So I just think we need a little bit more time before we fine tune or come to a conclusion on what we want to do first, rather than getting to know each other better first.
Thank you for all those comments. Here's what I suggest. I like ending meetings when people still have one more thing to say, because it means they're going to be even more excited for the next meeting, rather than ending meetings 10 minutes after everyone has checked out. What I'm hearing everyone say is that this group is ready, committed, open-hearted, willing to listen, get to hard work, but also recognize that sometimes you need to go through some of the soft sand before you get to the hard work. If people throw people right into the most piercing part of this work, they just might not show up. And we'd rather have more people show up and be brought in and have them be a part of the whole experience. And that we're still, this idea is still marinating, right? And this might be a long marinade, and it's not gotten to its full flavor yet after an hour. What I'm going to do is, after the call is over, make the notes that I've been taking just a little bit more understandable, because I've been writing it in shorthand for myself. Send the Google Doc that James and Carl already have access to all of you, and I'll make you all editors of it, so we can kind of create the document with each other. And I'm guessing that organically over the next few days or week, some of these pre-ideas are going to turn into an idea. And the idea is for the first something, knowing that it'll be hopefully the first of many. So it doesn't matter if the first something is perfect. It matters that the first something happened. And from there, we'll figure out what the community and the community's leaders want to do next. So if I have your blessing to do that, I will put Diane on the spot and see if you will end this experience with some song, with some music, with some uplift, bring us to Jesus moment, or bring us to any Lord moment, and you can. And we're in your hands for the next few seconds, if you don't mind doing so.
Behold, Jehovah seated on the throne. Abba, Father, well that overflows, the God who was and is and shall be forevermore. Holy is the Lord. Amen.
Man.
Amen. Blessing and honor and glory and power. Amen. 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 Blessing and honor and glory and power. Amen.
Amen.
Before we go, Rabbi, I want to give a special thank you to you and to Stuart coming in as the incoming president, and all the members of Temple Beth Am, Rabbi Stats, Alex, Tyson, and then to the Uncut Gems, my wife, Carl Jackson, Ananias. Thank you guys for taking this time to spearhead this vision that I believe God has put in place, and I'm just waiting to see what comes next.
Amen. Thank you, all of you. Look in your inboxes for that Google Doc. God bless. Be well. Be healthy. Be of great vigor. And I even for those of you who I've just met, I have great love for all of you. I look forward to seeing you soon.
To God be the glory. To God be the glory.
God be the glory. Amen.
Right. Bye-bye.
Amen.
Thank you for watching tonight's episode. I hope you learned a lot, and I hope it challenged you to want to get to know more about other people that are just outside of your bubble. The only way we're going to make it in this world is if we work together as a team. If we don't work together as a team, we are going to be in serious trouble.
Original movies, original series, original concerts, and more. CJC, one network, sharing the world.
What are you looking for? hope, guidance, spiritual enlightenment. What are you looking for? Family, peace, financial security, love, time. To the great city of Los Angeles, we want to welcome you to programming that will help lead you to the light. 24 hours a day. Original movies, original series, music, and more. CJC. Always positive.